Marcus was 43. He walked into that bar like he owned nothing in it. No designer jacket, no flashy watch. He ordered a single drink, said nothing to anyone. And within 20 minutes, a woman he had never met crossed the room and sat next to him. Not beside him, next to him, close enough to touch. She stayed for 2 hours. There were younger men in that bar, richer men, men who had been trying all night. None of them got what Marcus got without trying. What did Marcus have that they did not? It was not confidence. Not in the way most men understand that word. It was something far darker, far older, and far more uncomfortable to look at. Marcus had been broken completely, and he had put himself back together in a way that made him dangerous. Carl Jung spent decades studying the human mind. He called one part of us the shadow. The shadow is everything we have buried, everything we have denied, every weakness, every desire, every ugly truth we refuse to look at. Jung did not say the shadow was evil. He said it was powerful. He said that every man who refuses to face his shadow becomes hollow, and hollow men are invisible to women. But the man who faces his shadow, who looks at every broken piece and does not run, Jung called that the masterpiece of psychological development. Marcus was that man. Here is what most men get completely wrong. They think attraction is about what they add to themselves. A better body, more money, a sharper wardrobe. But the psychology says the opposite. Attraction, real attraction, the kind that makes a woman's body respond before her mind catches up, comes from what you remove. The masks, the pretenses, the desperate need to be seen a certain way. Robert Greene wrote extensively about this. He studied seduction across centuries of human history, and his conclusion was blunt. Seduction is a game of psychology, not beauty. The men who master it are not the most handsome men in the room. They are the men whose energy carries weight. The men who have something going on beneath the surface that she cannot quite name but cannot look away from. That energy has a source. And the source is pain that has been transformed. Arthur Schopenhauer understood something that most philosophers after him tried to ignore. He said that all desire springs from lack. Every human being is driven by an internal hunger that can never be fully satisfied. We spend our entire lives chasing things to fill that hunger, money, status, pleasure, and none of it works. The hunger remains. But here is what Schopenhauer also understood. The man who finally stops running from that hunger, the man who sits with it, examines it, and decides to use it as fuel instead of a curse, that man becomes fundamentally different from everyone around him. Women feel that difference. They cannot always explain it, but they feel it the way you feel a change in temperature when you walk into a cold room. Think about the last time you felt genuinely afraid of yourself. Not afraid of something outside you, afraid of what is inside. Most men never go there. They build an entire life designed to avoid that moment. They stay busy, they chase goals. They keep moving because the second they stop, the second they actually sit still and look inward, something comes up that they are not ready to face. Friedrich Nietzsche called this the crisis of self-overcoming. He wrote that the greatest power a man can develop is not power over others. It is power over himself. But reaching that power requires walking straight into the darkest part of your own psychology, into the part you have spent years pretending does not exist. Take a man named Elliot, 38 years old. Good job, decent apartment. He spent years trying to date. He would show up to every interaction performing. He would say the right things. He would act unbothered. He would play the game the way he thought the game was supposed to be played. And it never worked. Not once did a woman look at him the way he wanted to be looked at. One night after another failed attempt, Elliot did something he had never done before. He sat alone in his apartment, turned off every screen, and asked himself one question. Who am I when no one is watching? The answer destroyed him. He realized that everything he had been showing women, the confidence, the humor, the ease, was a costume. And underneath that costume was a man who was terrified. Jung would have called Elliot's moment the breakdown of the persona. The persona is the mask we wear for the world. Jung said that when the persona breaks, it feels like death because, in a way it is, the false version of you dies. But what comes after the death of the persona is the beginning of real power. Elliot spent the next year doing something most men would never do. He stopped performing entirely. He started facing every uncomfortable truth about himself. His insecurities, his fears, his genuine desires, the parts of him he had been hiding since he was a teenager. Some days it felt like he was falling apart. Some weeks he questioned whether any of this was worth the pain. But here is what happened after. 18 months later, Elliot walked into a social event. He was not trying to meet anyone, he was not playing a role. He was just there, present, quiet, still. A woman named Sarah noticed him within the first 10 minutes. Not because he was doing anything, because he was doing nothing. And the way he was doing nothing was different from the way everyone else in the room was doing something. Sarah told a friend later that being near Elliot felt like standing next to something solid in a room full of smoke. That is the effect of shadow integration. Jung described it as the man becoming whole, not perfect, whole. And wholeness is one of the most seductive qualities a human being can possess. Let me give you a concrete picture of what presence actually looks like. A woman named Christina once described what it felt like to be around a man she called completely different from every other man she had ever met. She said it was not about what he said. He actually spoke less than most men she knew. It was the quality of his silence. She said his silence felt like a room with solid walls, calm, stable, grounded. Robert Greene studied the most magnetically attractive men across history, and he found one trait that separated them from everyone else. He called it presence, and he defined it as the state of being entirely comfortable with who you are to the point where you no longer need the outside world to confirm your value. Greene made something else clear. Presence cannot be manufactured. You cannot fake it the way you fake confidence. Confidence can be performed. Presence cannot, because presence is the result of internal work that either has been done or has not. Nietzsche gave us the framework. He wrote about what he called amor fati, a Latin phrase that means the love of fate. Nietzsche argued that the most powerful men in history were not the ones who avoided suffering. They were the ones who embraced it, who looked at every painful experience and said yes to it, who used pain as raw material instead of something to escape from. Consider two men. Both are 45. Both have been through serious losses, divorce, career failure, financial collapse. The first man spent years after his losses trying to rebuild his image. He bought better clothes. He traveled. He posted curated versions of his life online. He was running from what happened to him, and women could feel that running. They could sense the instability beneath the surface. The second man went through the same losses. But he did the opposite. He stopped running. He faced every consequence of what had happened. He grieved. He questioned. He sat with the discomfort until it became something he could hold without flinching. 2 years later, he walked into a room and the energy shifted. Not dramatically, subtly, but it shifted. People listened when he spoke, even though he spoke quietly. Women gravitated toward him without being approached. One woman told a mutual friend that being near him made her feel like the world was not going to collapse. That is presence, and it is built from exactly what most men are trying to escape. Here is the part most men completely ignore. And it is the part that separates the men women sleep with from the men women simply find pleasant to be around. Presence alone makes you trustworthy. But trustworthiness does not create desire by itself. Desire requires something else, something darker, something that Greene called the controlled flame. Greene studied the most seductive men across centuries, and he found that every single one of them carried a visible tension. Not chaos, not instability, tension. The difference is crucial. Chaos repels, tension pulls. Think about it this way. A candle that burns completely evenly, no flicker, no variation, is boring. Your eye passes over it. But a flame that moves, that shifts, and dances while still holding its shape, that draws your eye. You cannot look away. That is the controlled flame. It is intensity that has been disciplined, passion that has been contained, power that is visible but not unleashed. Everything I have told you up to this point is true. But none of it will change your life unless you understand one final mechanism. And this mechanism is brutally simple. You have to actually do the work, not think about it. Not plan to do it next month, not read another book about it. Do it now, tonight. Starting the moment this video ends. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle is the way. The thing you are most resistant to doing is the thing that will change your life the fastest. Every man who has watched a video like this one has felt something shift inside him, a flash of recognition. That is what has been missing. And then the video ends and the feeling fades and nothing changes. So here's what I am going to give you. Not another framework, not another model, a single concrete practice. Tonight, after you finish watching this, Find a mirror. Stand in front of it. Look directly into your own eyes and ask yourself out loud, not in your head, 3 questions. First question, who am I pretending to be? Not who do you wish you were. Who are you pretending to be right now in your actual life today? Second question, what am I most afraid to admit about myself? This one will hurt. Good, that is the shadow showing its face. Do not look away. Third question, what do I actually want? Not what society wants for you. Not what your parents wanted for you. What do you, the real person underneath all the layers, actually want from your life? You do not have to answer these questions perfectly. You do not have to have a plan. You just have to be honest. Brutally, painfully, uncomfortably honest. Do this every night for 30 days. 30 days of 2 minutes each. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who was born into slavery, wrote that freedom begins the moment you stop caring about what you cannot control and start taking full responsibility for what you can. The only thing you can fully control is your own mind, your own honesty, your own willingness to look at yourself clearly. Everything else, the way women respond to you, the way the world perceives you, the energy you carry into every room, those are consequences. They follow from the source. And the source is you, the real you, not the version you have been showing people. This is not going to feel good at first. The first few days of the mirror practice will be uncomfortable. You will want to stop. You will want to rationalize. You will want to tell yourself this is unnecessary. That resistance is exactly the shadow talking. It is the part of you that has been running the show for years. The part that built the persona. The part that decided long ago that the real you was not acceptable and it will fight to stay hidden. Do not let it win. Nietzsche wrote that the man who becomes what he is has gone through the most difficult path a human being can walk. Not the most dangerous, the most difficult because it requires facing yourself with no escape route and no one to blame. The men like Marcus and Eliot did not stumble into their magnetic presence. They walked straight into the darkest room inside themselves and stayed there until their eyes adjusted. And when their eyes adjusted, they saw something extraordinary. They saw that the darkness was not actually dark. It was just unexplored. And once it was explored, it became power. That power is not something women chase. It is something women recognize. The way an animal recognizes safety instinctively before thought enters the picture. You have spent your entire life building the outside, the clothes, the career, the reputation, the curated version of yourself that you maintain like a garden. Now it is time to build the inside. Not because it will make women want you, although it will. Build it because it is the only version of yourself that is actually real. And real is the only thing that lasts. Start tonight. The mirror is already in your bathroom. The questions are already in your mind. All that is left is the decision to look. And once you look, you cannot unsee what you find. That is where the real power begins.